Welcome to Toastmaster Time, the show that's got everybody talking. I'm Justin Paras, and I'm very excited to be your host for tonight's episode. Just like in a regular Toastmasters meeting, we're going to have prepared speeches and evaluations. The evaluations are designed to be positive, constructive, and overall encouraging so that our speakers continue to feel motivated to become the best speakers that they can be. We are fortunate tonight to have Dan Ryken as our evaluator. Dan, please share with us what's in store for tonight's show.
Justin, thank you. Tonight, we have two speakers. Steve Taddei is going to be talking about a car rally where he was in competition with a lifelong friend. Jon Wolheim will be speaking about how ripples in our life may shape us. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you so much, Dan. We'll hear more from you later on in the show. As Dan mentioned, our first guest is Steve Taddei from the esteemed Oakland 88 Toastmasters Club. Steve was actually one of the first Toastmasters I met when I joined years ago. He inspired me then, and he continues to inspire me today. So Steve, welcome back to Toastmaster Time.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the kind words.
No problem. So share with us, how many years have you been in Toastmasters?
I think I just hit 16 years. I joined in June of 2008, and
Awesome.
I've had a great time doing a lot of different things for 16 years.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So when you look back on your 16 years, what has stood out most to you in terms of what you've enjoyed most about your experience?
What have I enjoyed most? I've enjoyed the relationships, meeting people like you, meeting people throughout the district where we've got a real talented group of members, all different skill sets, all different personalities. Some are more introverted than others, some are more extroverted than others, but it blends into where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
I completely agree. I've met so many great people, including you, throughout my time in Toastmasters. So if there's somebody out there who's new to Toastmasters and they're not quite sure how to get the most out of it, what advice would you share with them?
Oh, that's a great question. And I always say the same thing. Give as many speeches as you can. Give them as often as you can. If the speech is good, great. Keep giving speeches. If you give a speech that isn't as good as you want it to be, get back up as fast as you can and give speeches again. So that way you get more comfortable and you keep on improving, you keep the momentum.
I like that. As one Toastmaster once said, maximize stage time.
Maximize stage time.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
All right, you ready to rock out your speech?
I am.
All right, so we'll give you some time to go ahead and get set up while I share more information with our audience about Toastmasters.
All right, terrific.
Thank you, Steve. Toastmasters is a worldwide educational program. It helps people develop confidence through strong communication and leadership skills. There's 14,000 clubs around the world, over 270,000 members in 148 countries. For more information, please be sure to check out Toastmasters.org. Steve is going to be delivering a project from the Effective Coaching Pathway. This is a level 2 project where the objective is to connect with storytelling. Steve Taddei, the car rally, Steve Taddei.
When I say great rivalries, what comes to your mind? Lincoln Douglas? Dodgers Giants? How about Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity? Well, those are all good rivalries, but my favorite rivalry was the one I was part of. Steve and Wayne. Wayne and I have been lifelong friends. We got to know each other when we started high school, and we still communicate. But in high school, we were bitter rivals. We competed on the baseball field. We competed in the classroom. And on one spring night in 1974, we competed in the Alameda High School car rally. Now, what's a car rally? Well, a car rally is basically a scavenger hunt on wheels. It's a predetermined route, and whoever finishes the quickest wins. It's exactly what you want your 16-year-old new driver to be doing. There are absolutely no safety rules. Well, one way or the other, that night, Wayne and I were ready to go. Now, Wayne had this sweet yellow 1967 Mustang. I had an awesome red 1967 Mustang Fastback. 6 o'clock when the car rally was starting, the cars were gassed up, there was air in the tires, and each of us had a fire extinguisher. Why do we have a fire extinguisher? Well, Wayne and I both had a wingman. Wayne's wingman was Sonny, mine was Bobby, and each one of them stole a fire extinguisher from the school. So if we wanted to pull a prank, we could pull a prank. Well, we got going, and we drove about 10 minutes over to where the Alameda Beach is. And Wayne was a little bit ahead of me, but he was within sight. We get to the beach, Wayne pulls over. We think he found one of the clues. Well, what actually happened was Sonny got out, and he was ready to use the fire extinguisher. And he takes that fire extinguisher, and he aims it toward the San Francisco skyline, and he just let it go. And that's when we had our first teaching moment. Have you ever heard that term, peeing in the wind? Well, the same thing applies to powdered fire extinguishers. Sonny had turned completely white. There was just powder all over him. Wayne was laughing. Bobby was laughing. I was laughing. And we just had to go on. We were in competition. So we left the beach, and we're going up a few blocks. And Bobby said, I can do one better. We saw one of our classmates walking down the street. I'm going to shoot him with the fire extinguisher. Takes dead aim. Whoosh! Teaching moment number 2. If you're shooting a fire extinguisher from the car, open the window first. Now, I'm completely covered with powder. Bobby's completely covered with powder. Sonny is still covered with powder, and we've still got competition going on. But the one thing we knew was that none of the three of us were going to catch on fire that night. So now we drive a little bit farther. We go over the Bay Farm Island Bridge, and if you've been to Alameda, if you go over the bridge, on the left you see the golf course. On the right you see beautiful homes. Well, in those days there were no homes. It was Bay Farm Island, which meant there were farms. And we're driving and we're doing pretty good. And Bobby said, turn right here. So I turned right. And then Bobby said, no, we made a mistake. We've got to go another block. So turn around, come out. I turn around and the car stops. Motor's running. And I hit the gas. Not going anywhere. Bobby and I get out of the car, and somehow or another, a tomato patch came out and jumped in front of our car. And I'm stuck. And they turn around and the owners of the place are coming out. So now we've got some explaining to do. Well, we talked. The owners called my parents. My parents called AAA. And it was pretty well set up. So it was pretty easy to tow me out. I drove the car home. But it wasn't just AAA I had a problem with. There was also Triple G. My car was grimy. My parents were grumpy. And I was grounded. Back to you, Justin.
Thank you so much for that speech, Steve. If I ever need a fire extinguisher, I know who to go to. We're going to hear from our evaluator, Dan, in just a moment. But before that, I just want to share more information with you on Toastmasters. Whether you're looking to improve your job interview skills or become a better communicator at work or converse better in social situations, Toastmasters has something for you. There's a program in Toastmasters called Pathways, and there's 11 pathways that you can choose from. These range from presentation mastery to dynamic leadership to effective coaching and engaging humor, just to name a few. To learn more about the pathways, please check out Toastmasters.org. All right, Dan, please share with us your thoughts on Steve's speech today.
Thank you, Justin. There's got to be a statute of limitations. Man's got all this skill in storytelling, but I hope he doesn't get arrested. I got drawn into that story. I felt like I turned white. Being in the car with you, getting sprayed, I cannot believe these life lessons. And how interesting it is how you tell the story. Now, the hard part for me as an evaluator is, how do I improve on a story that you've animated with your passion and your life experience and your Toastmaster skills? You had good gestures, good eye contact, and the choreography and how you laid out the story worked really well. All I'm going to drag in is the idea of maybe vocal variety, maybe a little more pausing, but I'm falling back to the old standards in Toastmaster because I was just swept away. The speech was fascinating. I'm inspired to get into the storytelling Pathways book myself. Thank you, Steve, today. Justin?
Thank you so much, Dan. I really liked how Dan employed the sandwich technique, where he sandwiched the constructive feedback in between his positive feedback. We use that technique in Toastmasters so that the evaluations end on an encouraging note. So at this point, we're going to pause for a public service announcement, and we'll be back with our second speaker.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
There aren't any.
Because when it comes to a disease,
Freedom requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.
Welcome back to the show. For our second speaker, we are very fortunate to have the recent District 57 2024 International Speech Contest champion, Jon Wolheim. He is from City Speech Toastmasters. Jon, congrats and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Justin. So great to meet you in person after sharing so many virtual stages.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So share with us, how long have you been in Toastmasters?
Well, I was part of Toastmasters very early in my adult life. It helped me to overcome some very serious self-esteem issues when I was young, where the ability to speak in front of others was so far distant, it was almost unimaginable. And then after almost a 20-year break, I came back now just a year ago. So cumulatively, about 5 years of Toastmasters.
Awesome. So when you think back on your experience and the various things that you've gone through Toastmasters and learned, what have you enjoyed most about the experience?
I've enjoyed seeing people thrive, and starting from anywhere, starting from no background in speech, maybe even coming from a home life or even a culture where your voice isn't something that you can use, and seeing people turn that into the ability to convince, to compel, to connect is beyond inspiring to me.
Awesome. So I've seen you deliver many speeches, and I notice how confident you are. So for people out there who are struggling with confidence, particularly when speaking in front of a group, what would you say to them as far as how to be more confident?
Probably boils down to three things very quickly. First, it's going to be hard. Embrace that fact. It will always be challenging. How you navigate that. It's always going to be the same waters, but you'll be a more skilled sailor each time you speak. Secondly, people are on your side, especially at Toastmasters. And when you fail, just like Steve was saying so elegantly, when you fail, not if, when you fail, that is the most important moment that you can learn. And lastly, look forward to the next time. Enjoy, learn to enjoy that process of failure because it's iterative. And the next time, it won't necessarily always be better, but you will have learned for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us. You ready to deliver your speech?
So ready.
All right, go ahead and get set up while I share more information on Toastmasters with our audience at home.
Absolutely.
All right. The best way to learn about Toastmasters is to actually attend a club meeting. There are Toastmaster clubs everywhere, and you'll notice that most clubs have the three same parts. Prepared speeches, where members deliver speeches they've been preparing using one of the many Toastmaster paths and projects. Then there's table topics, where we work on our impromptu and on-the-fly speaking skills. And in the third and final part, we focus on providing feedback to speakers and anybody else who spoke at the meeting. And this is designed to help speakers continue to improve. Jon is going to be delivering his contest-winning speech here tonight. This is the speech he delivered to win the District 57 International Speech Contest. Jon Wolheim, ripples of respect, Jon Wolheim.
Join me for a walk. As our journey together begins, we find that our path winds through an ancient forest. We're beset on all sides by ancient oaks and endless fragrant pines. Journeying further, we find that our path leads us to the lake. As we stand together on the shore of the lake, we look out at its surface, a perfect, unbroken sheet of glass, and we see that it perfectly reflects the sky and the mountains beyond. Curiously, as we look down, we notice that on the shore we are all each holding a bucket. Inside of that bucket, we see that it is full of stones, and we come to discover that there is a stone for every moment that remains in our lives in our bucket. We know this because as we reach each moment in our lives, we find that moment's stone as we stand on the shore. We take it from the bucket and we throw it into that lake. Now we observe that most stones in their moments make very little impact, splash, gone. But some stones create ripples that become waves that shape the surface of that entire lake, even the shores far beyond where we can see. Today, I get to share with you a story 35 years in the making, a story of ripples from stones thrown that became the waves that shaped the shores of my life, then, now, and always. The year is 1989. Madonna's Like a Prayer is rapidly climbing the music charts. Neon fanny packs adorn the waistbands of acid-wash jeans as far as the eye can see. And I am 7 years old. Now, on this particular Friday afternoon on a June day in 1989, it was my favorite day of the week because it was the day that my mom, my 2-year-old brother, and I went to the grocery store in our small mountain hometown of Paradise, California. Why does this matter? Because that's where I got to read my video game magazines. So, as was custom, on this particular day we arrived, my mom went left to go shopping with my brother. I went right to aisle 11, where my magazines were waiting for me. And I lost myself in a reverie of Mario's karting on Rhodes Rainbow and blue hedgehogs spinning endlessly. And I stayed in that reverie for too long, because when I looked up, I found that my mom had already reached the checkout stand. This is a huge problem for 7-year-old Jon, because I may have missed my narrow window to convince her to buy one of these game magazines for me. So I immediately grab the closest Nintendo Power, slick back my curly red mullet, shuffle my acid-wash jeans right up to that checkout stand, and I find my mom crying. I found her sobbing, desperately searching through her purse. This was so strange. Stranger still was the cashier's actions. She was making big gestures, saying mean words, pointing at my brother, pointing at my mom, pointing at me in my face. I was so confused, so perplexed as this little boy. How we got to the car is a blur. But once we reached the relative safety of our station wagon, I asked my mom what happened. And she explained 3 things to me then that I remember as clearly as it was this morning. She said, "Jonathan, today we're using something to pay for our food called food stamps. Food stamps are something that families use when they need some food and they need some help. And lastly, sometimes people don't like people that use food stamps, and they can possibly even hate us. And today I lost mine. So that's why we're going home without our groceries today, and that's why that cashier was so angry with us. See, I came to learn that day a couple of things. First, I learned that my family was less than. And I learned that that cashier was throwing stones that she could never understand into lakes that she could never even see. And that shame, that became a very powerful motivator in me. It lit a nuclear reactor of motivation in me. That shame led me to become very entrepreneurial. I would buy candy bars from that same grocery store and sell them on the bus at 100% markup to pay for my first Super Nintendo. That shame, that burning shame, that led me to be very academically motivated, being the first college graduate with a single strand of my DNA. That shame, that burning shame seared into my young soul like a cattle brand that day. That led me to get my first job about as quick as I could. And I got that job at that grocery store, working alongside that cashier for 5 years. Awkward! Yes, extremely awkward. And yes, I did eventually tell her the story. And when I did, her reaction completely took my breath away. It wasn't what I expected. It was one of abject apology, sorrow. She sobbed and begged to call my mom to apologize. I came to learn that that cashier at that time in her life, she was navigating the loss of a child and a marital separation that stemmed from that. And underneath all of it, the disordered use of alcohol. It was not this black dragon hunting my family, attacking us, dropping boulders into our lakes and destroying our shores. It was a person hurting, bleeding, reeling, flailing, throwing stones everywhere that she could because she couldn't control what was happening in her life. And that lesson in empathy, that is the ripple that has stuck with me the longest. It has made me a much more empathetic husband to my amazing partner, Kelly. It has made me a more empathetic father to our perfect baby girl. It has made me a more empathetic, aspiring policymaker, seeking to lessen the impact of the waves felt by those families at whom stones are thrown. Those families, like mine, are always watching the horizon of their lakes, waiting for that dark demon of poverty to come back and take it all away again. And that can change. So now let's come back to the shore. Let's come back, because in a moment I'm going to hand you this stone. This stone is your next to throw into your lake. But before I do, I invite you to consider, will that stone that you're holding now, will that stone create waves of harm and hurt? Or will your legacy be ripples of respect that heal, that help, that are remembered and felt long after you and I fade away? Justin, back to you.
Thank you so much for that speech, Jon. Very, very thought-provoking. Thank you again for joining us and sharing that speech with us. So Dan, we'd love to get your thoughts on that contest-winning speech that Jon just delivered for us. First off, let's start with the positive. What did you enjoy most about the speech?
The personal part of his story that he told so eloquently, so that you could feel. I was a 7-year-old in the store, disappointed about my magazine, and then coming to terms with the idea that my family was different than others, and how that moved his life and changed his life. It's a very compelling story. And the skill that it takes to tell a story at that level and to win the district, I just am thrilled to get to be able to see it.
I agree. Phenomenal delivery. I felt I was there as he was telling his stories. Helped me to stay connected throughout the speech. Just the emotions he showed, the details and the stories he shared. What else did you enjoy?
Well, the wrap-up, the conclusion, was really a lesson.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Here's your next stone. Who are you?
Yeah. Giving us and the audience an action item to follow up on and think about.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know Jon is always looking to improve his speeches. So what insights or areas do you think he can possibly focus on to bring this speech to the next level?
For a typical speech, the cadence was quite fast. The story had lots of content that needed to be delivered. But had there been able to be pacing what allowed more pause, it might have allowed certain areas to have even greater impact. That's just an opinion. And in Toastmasters, maybe you give it a try, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not. I humbly offered my thought.
Perfect, perfect. Now, what would you say, and maybe you touched on this already, what was the golden gem for you, the biggest takeaway or the highlight of the speech?
To understand that everything we do in life has implications. And to put something out there, something's going to come back. Put out goodness. Put out kindness.
Exactly. That's the takeaway I took away from the speech as well. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being our evaluator here tonight. That's all the time we've got for tonight's episode. I want to thank you for watching. Toastmaster Time is filmed in the San Francisco Bay Area. For more information, please visit us at toastmastertime.com. Toastmaster Time is sponsored by District 57 Toastmasters. For more information on District 57, you can check out d57tm.org. And for general information on Toastmasters, including where you can find a club near you, make sure to visit toastmasters.org. I want to thank our wonderful staff and volunteers here at the Palo Alto Media Center and express my gratitude to Steve and Jon for joining us here tonight and delivering their speeches. On behalf of all of us at Toastmaster Time, I want to encourage you to join Toastmasters and to keep on talking.